So I'm here to present my analysis of the stadium situation at this point, and also my conclusions and recommendations at this stage. Beginning with Arden Hills, Ramsey County, it's easy to understand why the Vikings like the Arden Hills site. Ramsey County has made another excellent detailed proposal. The Vikings are truly wanted there. It has the advantage that the property is available for the project to begin. However, the legislature's unwillingness to permit Ramsey County commissioners to increase either the general sales tax or the food and beverage tax without a voter referendum leaves the county with no apparent means to raise its local share. I have been told that neither the Senate nor the House majorities will change their opposition in the coming session. That leaves the Vikings and the state of Minnesota as the project's only two financiers. The estimated cost of a new stadium in Arden Hills is approximately $1.1 billion. Even if the state increased its share from the previously stated $300 million to $400 million, the team share would have to be $700 million. If the Vikings so want to be in Arden Hills that they will increase their financial contribution to that amount, the project is potentially viable. If not, it is not. The other missing component of Ramsey County's proposal is the unwillingness of the Vikings owners to disclose their intentions with the property's 170 acres, which will not be used for the stadium. If the Vikings truly want to be in Arden Hills, they have thus far missed their opportunity to inspire decision makers and the public with their vision for the site's entire development. Regarding the city of Minneapolis, a Metrodome location, Minneapolis's proposal submitted last Thursday was meager. However, it did identify a local share of funding, which, if affirmed by the mayor, the city council, and the legislature, could make a stadium project there potentially viable. The city's stated position is that it prefers to build a new stadium at the site of the current Metrodome because it is slightly cheaper than the alternative. Amortized over the new stadium's expected life, however, that difference is relatively inconsequential. A first-rate stadium could unquestionably be built there, as it could almost anywhere, for its expected cost. However, I personally believe that the Metrodome site lacks the potential for additional economic development and job creation which the Arden Hills and Linden Avenue in Minneapolis sites offer. Key reasons for building a new stadium are the several thousand construction jobs it would provide for the next 3 years, and also the new commercial activity and permanent jobs it could generate once it's operational. The Metrodome has proven to be largely unsuccessful at stimulating new economic development nearby. Additionally, while short-term considerations should not dictate the location of a stadium for the next 30 years, there would be serious problems with the Vikings playing their home games at the University of Minnesota's TCF Stadium during the 3 years of new stadium construction. Traffic congestion and parking shortages nearby are among the numerous problems which have yet to be resolved by the university and the Vikings. The City of Minneapolis Linden Avenue project is an alternative site in Minneapolis that is being referred to, and I will refer to, as Linden Avenue. The city and the Vikings have said little publicly about their discussions regarding this possibility. The site does offer significant advantages over the Metrodome, particularly its proximity to Target Center, Target Field, downtown hotels, restaurants, and the like. However, serious concerns have been raised by the rector of St. Mary's Basilica, which is adjacent to the Linden Avenue location. Those and other concerns would need to be resolved before that site is viable. Clearly, the necessary due diligence has not been completed by the proponents of the Linden Avenue location. Until those questions have been answered, and it is better known what other unanswered questions remain, I could not recommend that site to either the legislature or the people of Minnesota. Furthermore, the Vikings' unwillingness to state the total amount they are willing to contribute to either Minneapolis project makes it impossible to make a final assessment of them. Additionally, the Minneapolis City Council has yet to vote or send a definitive representation of the ability to deliver a positive vote on whether they approve of the city's proposed means of financing its local share at either Minneapolis site. Shakopee and the rest of the additional submissions Only Shakopee's merits serious consideration, although several others deserve credit for their imagination and creativity. Unfortunately, Shakopee's proposal contains no local financial contribution to the project. Instead, it relies upon the expansion of gambling to one or two racinos, one located nearby the proposed site, to finance the public share of the project. Passage of the racino legislation to fund a new stadium is speculative. Even if it were to pass, several years of litigation in federal courts should be expected. Proceeds from the racinos then could not provide the assured revenue stream to back up state-issued bonds until that litigation were resolved. In conclusion, regrettably, there's not yet a stadium proposal with a complete and sufficient financial plan, one which assigns equitable obligations to the Vikings, the local partner, and the state of Minnesota. And no site sponsor has adequately resolved the major unanswered questions in order to merit the approval to proceed. Unless the legislature is willing to change its insistence on a voter referendum before Ramsey County can impose any kind of tax increase, the only two feasible sites become the Metrodome and Linden Avenue, both in Minneapolis. While issues surrounding these sites are not all resolved, they are potentially resolvable and should be addressed immediately. Also, the Vikings must reveal their financial commitment to each project. Otherwise, the lack of firm and binding commitments by the respective parties will seriously jeopardize any chance for legislative approval in this session. It is rumored that some legislators would prefer to postpone final action until 2013 because they want to avoid taking a tough vote on a controversial project before next November's election. The inability of stadium proponents to complete their own preparations gives cover to that delay. Quote, "We can't vote because we don't have a specific proposal," close quote, has been the consistent and legitimate refrain of those wishing to avoid a vote. The longer it takes to finalize the proposal with a single site, with an agreed-upon, reliable, and equitable financing plan, and with satisfactory answers to important remaining questions, the less likely it is that a stadium will be approved by the legislature in the upcoming session, and thus this year. I want to pay special tribute to the outstanding leadership given to this project and the Herculean efforts to advance it by Senator Julie Rosen, Representative Maury Landing, the Senate and House authors respectively, the MSFC Chair Ted Mondale, and CSL consultant Mr. Craig Skame, who has provided public decision makers with extremely valuable information. Were it not for their unceasing efforts, there would be no prospect of a new People's Stadium and about the same likelihood of keeping the Vikings in Minnesota. So what are the next steps? First, legislative leaders need to make clear to Ramsey County their final position on approval or non-approval for any local tax increase without a referendum. Secondly, Ramsey County has to state definitively whether it has any other local financing options. And thirdly, the Viking owners need to say whether or not they are willing to contribute $700 million for a stadium at Arden Hills. If the answer to all three of those questions is no, the Arden Hills site is not financially viable. That leaves Minneapolis. The Metrodome is the default site. It's not the potentially best option, in my judgment. However, it faces the least obstacles to proceeding, and most of those are short-term at TCF Stadium. Linden Avenue is potentially more advantageous because of its proximity to downtown and greater potential to spur additional economic development. However, its unresolved problems need to be solved before the project could proceed. Other missing pieces, as I've said before, in both Minneapolis projects are an affirmative vote by the Minneapolis City Council on the local financing proposal and a clear public statement by the Vikings of the amount of money they are willing to put into either Minneapolis project. All those questions are resolvable within a short time. A short time is all that remains to resolve them, so that a single, detailed, and financially viable project proposal can be presented to the legislature for its consideration in the upcoming session. I'd like to ask Chair Mondale to elaborate on what I've said, as well as to walk you through the supplementary documents that we provided. And I might say that the due diligence that's been done on these has been really outstanding in my judgment, and the analysis, the term sheets, the comparison of the various site proposals and the financial aspects of them are just really taking an incredible amount of work and constant refinement, and Mr. Mondale deserves great credit for that. And I also attached a letter that I have sent today to Mr. Wilf, which outlines the remaining parameters of the negotiations with the Vikings that must be successfully resolved before this project's ready to go forward.
Don't go anywhere. So what you have in front of you is really the analysis of the four different proposals that the governor put out. And as you look at the top, it talks about the design, the construction, the operations, whether new taxes would need to be approved by the legislature, the costs. As you see, the Metrodome comes in at $918. $11 million of that $918 would be the capital that goes into TCF Bank Stadium. And down to the bottom, you can see the total cost is $918. These numbers, this team number, has not been accepted by the team, obviously, but the city number, the city council president and the mayor have said that they'd be able to come up with those dollars. And there you have the state at $340. Now, what we did, you have another sheet where we ran what kind of investment would the state get back? What kind of revenue would the state get back for their investment? And if you assume a 2013 start, meaning you have, by passing a stadium, you keep the team here, and you look at their income taxes, and you look at the sales taxes generated by tickets and memorabilia, etc. On the Metrodome site, the state over the 33-year period would have a net present value profit or payback of $198 million above what it contributed. If you go to the Linden Avenue site, it's basically the same, except the cost is higher. The city shares the same, so therefore the state receives less dollars. You can see Ramsey County with the 3% food and beverage tax in there, basically a financeable deal that's with about a mid-range of return, which is just a factor of the state dollars. And then you see the no local option funding where this team would have to put in $700 million. So that's sort of the base of the analysis of the proposals we think are viable that has gotten in. As you see, the state tax number is below it, and we look forward to working with the legislature and the cities and others to see if we can't come to a single site and move forward with a bill early this session. Be glad to take any questions.
Did you say you look forward to working with the legislature and the city? Are you assuming that's Minneapolis at this point?
We are looking at the proponents of the stadium. So the governor laid out the questions that need to be answered, and we look forward to trying to narrow those questions down and move forward with whatever the site that we feel is the best and that we can get passed.
Well, based on the numbers you've given us, that seems like a fair question, that this is Minneapolis.
Well, I said there are three questions that need to be answered regarding the Arden Hills site. The first is, whether if the legislature, what has been told to me privately is what the legislative position is, and they will state publicly that they will not agree to a local tax increase without a voter referendum, which would mean in November of this year. Then that's one piece of reality. The second is from Ramsey County, do they have any other local option available to them of any kind that could be approved? And third, in the absence of those two possibilities, as I said earlier, the Vikings team share would need to be about $700 million. And are they willing, because they want to be in Arden Hills so much more than anywhere else, to put in that amount of money? If the answer to those three questions is no, then in my judgment, the Arden Hills site is not financially viable. I mean, but I can't, if one of those were a yes, that would change the equation. That's just where it is today.
The I-Dome site, if it was approved by the Mall of America, basically it's the Georgia Dome, but the top roof is like an iPad. so that the edges are all solar panels with a screen in the middle. And that particular design is already proven. It was the largest dome built in the United States in '91, but it would be modernized, so we'd be able to advertise the investors' money and be privately funded. If that design is approved by the Mall of America owners, would that be, and it wouldn't require any taxpayer dollars, would that be something you would agree to?
Well, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. I just, we haven't done the due diligence on it. The proposal that was submitted, that was yours, was imaginative, but didn't have any due diligence applied to it. So, we've been spending the last year doing an enormous amount of work on the proposals that have been offered because they're specific and real. And to get something, last Thursday afternoon and want me to respond to it now, I'm not able to do so.
Governor, knowing the way the process works and using football parlance, Arden Hill is a Hail Mary right now.
Well, I don't understand. I mean, I just put it in the terms of the three questions that I say need to be answered, and if the answer to all three of them is no, then it's resolved for at least the time being. So, that's just the way it is.
Governor, you said a few minutes ago that you think Linden Avenue is more advantageous than Metrodome. Can you clarify where you stand on that?
Well, I think because of its proximity to downtown Minneapolis, and meaning then the hotels and the restaurants, the bars, the commercial activity in the city, as well as to the immediate proximity to Target Center and Target Field, you'd have sort of a large entertainment complex there, and for national conventions and all the other activities that go on even now at the Metrodome, but I think even more so because you have that configuration. And so I think there'd be much greater likelihood of additional economic development occurring, commercial shops, bars, restaurants, and the like, that'll generate more jobs and more economic return to the city and the state than the Metrodome has done so far. So that's my judgment of it. I've had that confirmed by by downtown business leaders and others, and it still nevertheless has to overcome these objections before it's viable.
Is that your choice then? Is that what you're saying is your preferred choice?
Well, if the concerns of the rector of St. Mary's Basilica were satisfactorily resolved, and there's some other issues that have arisen, if those can be resolved, then yes, it would be. And it has the advantage that the Vikings could play the next years at the Metrodome while that site's being built, as opposed to shifting over to TCF Stadium.
Governor, you sounded more pessimistic about Racino than I've ever heard you before. Why is that?
Well, I don't know that I've ever been pessimistic. I've been, saying I don't know whether it could pass the legislature or not on its own. But even if it were to pass the legislature this session, I don't think I've ever said otherwise than that it's going to face several years of litigation in federal court, and so it's not going to be available as a guaranteed source of revenues for the stadium for that period of time. So I mean, I don't, I think it's a standalone, separate question for the legislature. And some have proposed linking it to paying back the school shift. And that's, what should be debated in the legislature. I consistently said that I favor expansion of electronic pull tabs as a source because the tribes have indicated they will not challenge that in court, and therefore those revenues could be immediately forthcoming.
Governor, would you agree that the Mall of America location would be the best place to sell event tickets to the 100,000 visitors every day there?
I don't know. As I said before, I haven't had a chance to analyze your proposal.
Governor, what do you say to folks in Minnesota? I mean, should people be disappointed by this, where we are at this stage? Do you think people expect to be further along? Are you disappointed we're at this point?
I think we're very close. Use your analogy. I think we're at the 5-yard line. It's first and goal, and I think we've got a great opportunity here. I think we've moved a long ways forward. I think the analysis you see there, the term sheets and the side-by-side comparisons is, just a huge advance. And again, Chair Mondale and his team deserve credit for that, and the city of Minneapolis has participated in that as well, as have the Vikings. Ramsey County, I think, has been superlative from the beginning. They've laid it out there, and they've said what they want to do. They're just, at this point, not able to carry it out through no fault of their own. So, I think we've narrowed it down, and we've got a relatively few unanswered questions that are answerable in the next few days, and the session begins on Tuesday. It's going to last for a while. I hope this could be brought up very early, but, it'll be what it'll be. And so I think we're getting close.
Governor, how are these answerable in the next few days? They haven't been able to answer the Racino question or the tax questions or the referendum question for months or years. What makes you think in the next couple of days?
I'm talking about the project itself, the financial plan. How to finance the state part of that is something that would be, yes, part of that consideration. But again, if somebody has a better preference to what I propose with expanding the charitable gaming, then let's have a vote on charitable gaming. Have a vote on that, as long as it generates the $28 million of annual revenues for the paying off the state bonds. I mean, either one would work. So I think the real question is, what's the site? Is there a clear plan, a clear public commitment by the Vikings, by the local partner, and the state? And does the legislature approve of that arrangement, or do they want to modify it, which is certainly their prerogative? And I think we can get that underway very shortly.
Governor, have you set up a new timetable at this point? You've expressed concerns about this issue getting dragged deep into the session, getting caught up in politics. And also, do you believe at this point the Vikings have been a hindrance in this respect, that they have been less than forthcoming in terms of what their contribution would be in the Linden Avenue site? And have you told them that?
Well, the letter I've stated here sets out the parameters. They're businessmen, and they've been very successful, and they own the only football franchise in the state of Minnesota. So, I want them to be successful at this site because I want a long-term commitment for Minnesota. I want them to have the wherewithal to have a good team and win a Super Bowl. So, I don't think I don't like to characterize them as an obstacle or a barrier or the opponent. We're all on the same team. We have the same objective, which is to keep the Vikings here. And to their credit, they've made it clear they would like to keep the Vikings here for the long-term future. So it's a matter of how we work out the details to accomplish that, and we're involved in negotiations to that end.
There wasn't a timeline, though. Do you have a new one in mind?
No, the last deadline I gave last week actually worked. I got 9 proposals, I've brought ones out that I didn't know existed before. So, I think we met that hurdle, and again, there's not everything resolved, but we've made a good advance. And so the timeline now really is a prerogative of the legislature, and that's a question to ask of Speaker Zellers and Majority Leader Senjum, and also the 2 authors.
Have any meetings taken place with the Basilica? And since I know you said you were meeting with them last week, have any further meetings taken place, and where does that stand right now?
I met with Father Bauer last Friday, and as a result of that, we set up a staff-level meeting today, which Mr. Mondo can elaborate on, and then we have a meeting set up for this later this week, and with myself and with him and other principals, including Chair Mondale, to carry those discussions further. So we're making a concerted effort to see if those concerns can be resolved. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think we're at a point now where we fully understand what their concerns and issues are. They fully understand what the project would look like, and we hope to have a very productive meeting on Friday to hopefully resolve outstanding issues. But it seems like it can be manageable.
So they're more on board with this now?
Well, I don't think it's appropriate for us to characterize their position. We had a meeting last Friday. There's another meeting today, and they'll have another meeting on Friday. I wouldn't be able to characterize what I think their views are until after the meeting on Friday.
Governor, to be fair to the public, we're going to do 1,000 in-person survey to get you the public's feedback on our proposal. And would it make sense to ask all the other proposals to do the same so that we have at least consensus from a small segment of the public?
Well, I think your play now is with the legislature. If you're dissatisfied with my conclusions and you want, they're ultimately going to make the decision. So, if you should take your proposal and your surveys and whatever, take it to the legislature, because that's where, at this point, the ball is going to be played.
Governor, the two Minneapolis sites listed on your handout here have state contributions of $340 million and $395 million. You previously put a $300 million cap on this. Would you support that extra spending?
I would, because it's not going to, again, there's no additional cost to the taxpayer. It's going to be totally paid off with non-general tax fund revenues with in my proposal, expansion of charitable gaming. And so it'll require additional revenues from that activity, but it will not add $1 of cost to a Minnesota taxpayer, except for people who choose to engage in charitable gaming. So, those numbers are not cast in stone. Obviously, the legislature has, again, the final say on this, but, we to make the financing work, that's what we estimate the range of the state share will have to be.
$28 million a year is what you're thinking from the
Actually, it was $28 million was for the $300 million, so it's probably more about $34 or $35 million. But the expansion of the charitable gaming, depending on how you shape it, is probably about estimated by the Department of Revenue to be up about $60 million a year of additional revenues for the state. So that would more than cover any scenario. You could hypothetically cover the entire, the Arden Hills share with whether it's politically feasible, but it's financially viable to do that. But again, that would require the Wilfs to ante up considerably more than they've been asked to and indicated they will.
Do you have any hope the legislators who are meeting later this afternoon will come to any kind of consensus?
Well, I hope they have a good discussion. I think they will. I hope that this will provide some definition. They can either be for it or against it, but hopefully it'll provide some refinements that they can consider. And it really will be involved. My Deputy Chief of Staff, Michelle Helgen, will be at the meeting tonight. But ultimately they're going to have to make their own way now and decide how they want to proceed, and that's their prerogative.
So are you stepping back from the process?
Oh, not at all. No, but I'm just recognizing that now, in a sense, I'm passing on where I stand today to the legislature, and as I say, it's their prerogative how to proceed and what to do from here. But I'll certainly I'll be closely involved.
But are you going to, at this point, you are not pushing one proposal over the other. You have laid them out with your caveats, and you think that the problems that each one has.
Well, what I'm saying at this point is, we've got these few remaining unanswered questions, which I think if I were a member of the public as well, I would say, you can't make a decision until you have all the facts. And there are like 3 major facts missing with Arden Hills. There are a couple with Linden Avenue. I think either of those are potentially better development sites. That's my opinion. Somebody else might feel otherwise than Metrodome. I think the Metrodome is perfectly acceptable, kind of fallback position if the other 2 aren't workable. So I could support any one of those 3. And I think the facts will eventually, dictate to me and to everybody else which is the best site.
Follow up, but you would not describe yourself as the quarterback of this, to stretch the metaphor, of this operation at this point.
No, I think we're a team. We're kind of like a crew. We're all pulling our oars together, and if we don't pull together, we'll bang up the oars.
Is that a problem at this point as we get into the session, and it's going to be very messy, a lot of other issues? Is there a problem that there is no quarterback for a state?
Well, the quarterbacks in the legislature are Senator Rosen and Representative Lanning. They're the quarterbacks there. So by your analogy, they would be the appropriate ones in terms of the session. But it has been a team and a collaborative effort, and I've been in consultation with them. And again, I'm not going to speak for them, but we've been in discussion with this all the way.
Governor, you're not setting a new deadline for getting these questions answered. You're just going to let them come in wherever they come in.
We're pressing. I'm not going to set a public deadline, but we're pressing hard. I mean, that's the basis of the reason for the letter to Mr. Wilf today, which you have a copy of, and we're pressing, again, meeting with the rector of St. Mary's on Friday, and we had a number of other meetings, and I got an email from Mr. Mondale at 5:10 this morning, so I know he's on it around the clock, and so, we're pushing hard.
And will you announce your preference before the session?
Well, I think it's when these questions have been answered. I think again, I think the answer will speak for itself. But yes, at the point where I think this is clearly the definite best possibility, and the question marks around it have been satisfactorily resolved. Now there are always going to be a couple of surprises down the road on any project of this magnitude. But once we get to a point where the financing is clear and whatever the local objections are, and we have the city council's support for if it's Minneapolis, and answer for I mean, those things again are all answerable, and then I think it'll be pretty clear.
Have to be part of the proposal.
Has Hennepin County been a player at all? Have they stepped forward to say maybe they might get involved?
They've not been involved for a number of months.
What about Target Center? The Minneapolis City Council has made it pretty clear they want that included as part of the package. Do you see that still going forward?
The Minneapolis proposal As you saw, the funding is $150 million in capital and $6.5 million a year in operating. I think that's like $314 million that the city is putting in. As part of their bigger proposal, they would have a $150 million renovation of the Target Center, with 50 of that coming from the team. None of that money would come from the state, so it's separate revenue streams that the city already have that would become available once the convention center bonds are paid off.
Governor, do you like the idea that the solar-powered iDome would at least show that we're green-friendly?
We want the project to be LEED certified wherever it occurs.
Is the farmers market site at all in the conversation anymore?
I haven't heard it be, the concerns about sharing, carrying hands, and some other concerns about that particular location have I can't say taken it away, but I haven't heard about it recently.
I would say the downtown business leaders like the Linden site better. It's bigger. It seems to work better, and you don't have that issue with the sharing and carrying hands, either keeping them there, which doesn't make a lot of sense, or trying to relocate them. So I would say it's pretty much a consensus of that group that the Linden Avenue site works better from a stadium downtown purpose. That's their opinion.
For the record, I stayed 19 minutes longer than I did this morning. I hope that'll be duly noted. Thank you. Have a good day.